Hi guys, this is Sloaneandkim Petersen with the Petersen Group, and we are here to talk about our favorite subject, the economic forecast in Utah. Okay, so something that obviously we love to keep you guys posted on is the market in Utah. That's what we do. And every year we meet with the top economic professors at the University of Utah, and they kind of forecast what's going to happen in the state of Utah. Now, of course, we don't have a crystal ball. However, from studying this for years and years and years, we can kind of project where the market is going. So the first thing we want to talk about is why Utah is a high growth state. And some of those reasons include the labor market. Obviously, we've got a lot of new builds going on. We've got infrastructure happening. That creates a whole labor force that we are in need of that's creating jobs for us. Another thing is geography, transportation, like I just talked about, infrastructure. One of the reasons why we are a high growth state is the demographic growth and characteristics, right? We have large families. It's a great economic place to live. Also, our quality of life. Utah's great. We've got a lot of outdoor activities. We're relatively affordable in terms of, national market standards. The state's fiscal condition and business climate. We are a huge, huge state supporting entrepreneurship and small business. That appeals to a lot of people. Another thing is we're just a high growth region, right? We're kind of in the hub. Things are happening here. We're bringing in a lot of technological jobs, a lot of high paying jobs. That creates a lot of reasons for people to want to move into the state as well. And another thing is favorable distribution of income. So kind of what that means is, unlike some other states like, Detroit, who's basically based on the auto industry, we've got blue collar jobs, we've got white collar jobs, we've got things for people with high education, no education. Pretty much if you live in this state, you can get a job.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to share a quote I'm going to bring up on the screen really quick. And it says, "Is it possible that rising mortgage rates will slow the housing market? Or the Fed might raise rates sooner than expected due to the recent pickup in inflation. But I believe one thing is certain, inventory will tell the tale." And that's from Bill McBride. He's the founder of Calculated Risk. And that quote really resonated with me for a few reasons. I believe one thing is certain that we can really count on in this uncertainty, and that's really that inventory is going to tell the tale, right? It's going to keep rising. It's probably the most true statement that we could say right now. There's so much speculation in the market right now. What's going to happen with mortgage rates, what's going to happen with the Fed, what's inflation doing. And then we add the coronavirus to all that, right? Which gives us even more uncertainty. So there's so much stuff out there people speculating on, and it's really going to impact, the real estate business when we see that stuff. So as we talk about inflation going forward, I think that's going to affect the real estate market a little bit, but not really as much locally in Utah as we have anticipated.
Absolutely, 100% true. And as you guys know, inventory's been down, and I know it feels like we're facing another year of low inventory. And while to a certain extent that's true, really what it is inventory is low because demand is high. And that is what we're facing again this year. We've got more people wanting to buy houses than we have houses on the market.
Yeah, so what I want to show you this other slide really quickly, and it talks about housing inventory is lower than last year. So Realtor.com, what they do here is they look at where we're at in 2020 in December, and then we compare, December of 2021. These stats are from the end of December. The national average you see kind of in the middle there, it shows just under 27%. It's down over the year, or down year over year, and you can look across the country. So most of the country we can see everywhere's down, right? We have, some of these huge ones like 31% in Wyoming, 33% in Louisiana. Utah, we're down about 12%, and in my opinion, I think that's a little bit modest. Like we've seen how much low inventory that we've had there, but no doubt we have a significant lack of inventory across the country.
Absolutely. And some of that is just due to buyer activity, right? Like we talked about, we are a high growth state. Some of that is our, Gen Z buyers coming into the market. And some of that is the influx of people moving in from out of state. So even though, the listing inventory is down, it's not always necessarily because we don't have houses. It's because our demand and buyer activity continue to rise.
Yeah, definitely. So when we look at the pandemic, right, a lot of people think that that's slowing down the market. And what we looked at is it's really not, right? Like,
Absolutely.
as what's causing all this uncertainty, and buyers aren't pushing back on that. They're I think really more than ever, they're thinking about, maybe we should start thinking about where we want to live because we've been spending more times in our houses. So if we look at this next slide that I just pulled up, it shows the showing numbers that come across. So this is from a company called Showing Time, which is a lot of realtors use that to book the showing. So it gives us a pretty good pulse on those. So we can look at, 2017 all the way through 2021, and we can see really pre-pandemic, we actually had less showing activity than once we hit pandemic, and then really post-pandemic, right? Or if we can even say post right now. So at 2020, we had 156 showings per month, and this is just going in November. And why I like to look at November is that's when we see some of the slowest months, or the slowest month in showings because of the holiday. And so even during the holiday month, right, we're seeing a huge increase, even up 25 showings more than 2020 at that time.
Absolutely. And one of the things, obviously, we know that supply and demand problem creates is our driving home prices, right? As you guys know, if you've studied the market at all, and what we always tell you, it's a hot real estate market, meaning that because we have supply and demand issues, home prices are rising. And last year we saw in Utah a 28% equity gain for the year. Now, we predicted a hot market, but I don't think anybody could have predicted that. And like this next slide shows, the equity growth is still surging. Utah is still projected to have a double-digit home increase. And it's good we're coming to you now, because we're coming to you before we realize that for the year, right? Basically, we're seeing the same market again that we saw last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to point one more thing out on the slide, right? We show the national average is just under 57,000. And then in Utah, we can see that we're actually at 91,000 people that actually gained equity last year. So we're always leading the nation on stats like this, and we're always outperforming as far as housing and employment growth and population growth. So it's really important to keep an eye on that. And even Idaho usually trumps us on this kind of stuff, but last year we even outperformed Idaho in appreciation gain.
Yep, crazy.
I want to pull one more thing out really quickly. This next slide, where it says, not only have equity gains helped homeowners more seamlessly transition out of a forbearance and avoid a distressed sell, but they're also enabled with many to continue building their wealth. So when we talk about this, right, people always ask me about the forbearance, right? Hey, Sloane, like, what do you think that's going to do to the market? Are we going to see this huge crash and this foreclosure market come into play? It's really not the case. We have, I don't remember the exact total of forbearances, but it was under 1 million for the whole country. Utah has about 17% of those. And so we're talking about being down about 44,000 homes off the market, right? And that means population. We have more population than we do homes, right? And people always think, well, how could we be down 44,000 homes? Does that mean that we have a big homeless problem, right? And every state's dealing with a little bit of homelessness, but really what's happening is people are doubling down. What that means is that they're living with parents, right? They're living with multiple generational households. They're having more roommates. They're living with friends and family. And so we're seeing that more in the market right now. So another reason why that's really important is when we start talking about like distressed property, that really happens for a few reasons. The first thing is that happens is we see a huge job loss, right? They can't really afford to pay the payment anymore. And the second is that, maybe they started out like maybe only being, the 5% down. And then if a market turns, they don't have the money to get themselves out. Right now, we've seen such an increase in equity, like Kim said, that 28%. Yeah. Even if you were to have a medical emergency, a job loss, something big, you could really sell your house, pay off that debt, and still be on top. So we really don't project a foreclosure market coming. And in Utah, if you were to look at the foreclosures, we have less than 8 in the entire state, right? So that's unprecedented. We've never seen numbers that low.
Absolutely. And then a stat we did talk about, and like Sloane said, unemployment rates. Right now, we are under 2% in Utah for unemployment. So not likely to see any sort of foreclosure market.
Definitely. The national average is actually closer to 5%. So we're beating national average even on unemployment, which we usually do in Utah.
Absolutely. And another big factor that we want to talk about is a mortgage rate projections, right? So when we talk about affordability and we talk about home price increases, another factor to consider is mortgage rates. And currently speaking, we are at around 3.3 to 3.5.
Yeah, so it's actually gone up, right? So we projected Q1 to be 3.3. We've seen that happen, but we've actually been close. I've seen people that have good credit that are hitting more like 3.5. So I think that last thing of 3.7, I think that's definitely going to happen, and
Absolutely.
maybe even sooner than Q4.
Absolutely. So again, another reason why getting this information early is pertinent. If you are planning to purchase, the sooner the better, because not only are you going to see the equity gains versus paying for them, but that interest rate can save you a couple $100 every single month.
Absolutely. We just shot a cost of waiting video. You can actually see the link just by clicking right there, and that will go and take you to the cost of waiting, which will let you see exactly what that looks like for this year as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so when we talk about Utah and we talk about it being a high growth state and supply and demand issues, some of the other reasons why we see Utah continuing to have a housing shortage, some of our key indicators are that the new home market is rising, right? We are seeing more demand for new builds and more demand for using land for high density housing, townhomes versus single family homes. And that's a real key indicator that we're going to continue having those same supply and demand issues. Another thing is the existing home market, right? The reason why prices are increasing and you're gaining that amount of equity, those double-digit equity gains, is because there are buyers willing to pay those prices because we have a housing shortage. And the third thing is our rental market, right? If you look at rents, first of all, they're just as, if not more expensive than, purchasing a home, which indicates there's a housing shortage, and that there are very few rental vacancies. It's getting harder and harder to qualify or find a place to live because so many people need housing.
Absolutely. So I just want to come back to the housing shortage, right? So we have housing shortage. One of those several factors leading to higher house prices, as we have some of these below. So I'm going to bring up that slide just so we can look at that a little more in detail. So we have multiple factors, and then we have market factors, right? So some of the municipal factors are going to be like regulatory delays. So right now we're seeing just really government entities, right? Like the city, county level, they're really getting inundated with permits and all these things, and that's taking a lot longer. We had met with a developer this morning, actually, and he said, usually something that takes him like 3 months to get a subdivision approved, he's been working on that for 3 entire years, right? So you can see, like, that's like an extreme delay that we've been seeing, and Kim's parents tried to buy in Tremont not that long ago, a few years ago, and we actually decided to, not buy out there, but just waiting for them to record that land. We were at like 5 months, and they still couldn't record the land. Usually that's like a 3 to 6 week process. So, we are seeing a lot of those. Development cost, right? It's costing more money to develop. It's whether that be material, whether that be just permitting and all those kind of things. And then really zoning ordinances, right? A lot of cities and counties are really pushing back on high density, which is a whole another topic we'll go over at some point. But high density is really important. We need high density. However, we know that we have to have the water infrastructure and things like that to actually be able to do that, right? So then there's some market factors. Some of those things, right, we have economic and demographic growth. So Utah is very favorable when it comes to economic growth. It's very favorable to businesses coming in the market. We're leading the country again on job growth, creating jobs and things like that. And then land costs, right? Those are becoming up. Those are skyrocketing up as land becomes more expensive. Developers just aren't interested in developing that.
Absolutely.
And we talked about material, that's going up. We've all noticed that, right? Lumber was the first thing that started, and then lumber's calmed down a little bit, but we're still seeing labor really go up substantially.
Yeah.
And then things like, cement and windows, all the way to doors, all that kind of stuff's been increasing. The COVID-19 obviously has a perverse impact in some states. Utah, like, we've wavered pretty well, but that still has some sort of impact, especially, when we shut down these factories for a long period of time, even 6 weeks, right? We're just behind on production. And then we've had, low interest rates for really like the last 18 months.
Absolutely.
For really years, right? But the last like 18 months were just ridiculous. Seeing rates hit even lower than, 3%. So that stuff's going to start climbing a little, which will help slow down the market a little. But still, bottom line, we're projecting the market to go up, 10 to 12% this year. And I think it's going to be a great market for Utah. So one more slide I wanted to show you guys is this last slide, which it shows just kind of the higher housing prices, right? So the average price in 2020 was 438,000, just under 439, and then this year, right, we're already seeing it be about 556. And, you know, that's an average, like we talked about earlier, of 26, just under 27% in appreciation gain year over year. I don't think we've seen that ever, you know, in the history of real estate.
We have not.
And that's about $8.2 billion. And that's just Utah that we're talking about, that we've seen.
In equity.
You know, yeah, in equity wealth building, right? Equity
Yeah.
gains. So really, like, you know, going back to renting, like I know a lot of renters that are on the fence, and they're really getting screwed more than anybody, right? Because
Absolutely.
the people that own homes, even if you stay stagnant or kind of, you know, say, you know, I'm going to wait a little while, you're still building, you're still gaining that equity. Renters aren't gaining that at all, right? So that 28% increase, now they have to pay 28% more for that same house as they did last year, and almost a whole percent, really more than a whole percent of interest higher, and rents going up by
Absolutely.
15%
Yeah.
this year, right? So it really doesn't make any sense to stay as I mean, obviously sometimes you have to what you have to do, right? We all can't afford or qualify to buy a house, but I'm just going to let you guys know, if you guys can afford to buy a house in 2022, I would highly recommend doing it. We're going to see double-digit increases this year. That might slow down in the future, but even slowing down is 6 to 7%, right? So I think this is the last year really of double-digit. However, you know, most of us can't afford to lose that, you know, that $40,000 to $50,000 waiting till next year to buy.
Absolutely. And most of us can't afford to save that either, right? So the best way is to invest in a house. And of course, when we have these conversations with you, it's not to scare you. It's not to say that the market is completely unaffordable or that you can't purchase a home. It's what does it look like for me to get into the market to gain that equity? And that's something we love to talk about with all of our clients. So if you want a one-on-one conversation, if you want a more personalized market analysis of where you're at, please feel free to reach out. You can call us at 801-529-3867 or email us at Sloaneandkim@gmail.com. We hope you found this information valuable. We are always here to let you know what is going on in the real estate market.
For sure. Thanks, guys. We'll see you guys soon.
Bye.